It's the very last day in the Every Bit Counts challenge that I joined in the month of August, and today I want to show you how to preserve an abundance of eggs in maybe a way you haven't thought about before. And also, my basil plant is going crazy, so let's make some pesto together too. Hey guys, it's Sarah again from H is for Homestead, and we're starting out by cleaning a bunch of basil. So this basil plant that I have is going crazy, and our garden is pretty much done, and we were going to let the animals come in and just kind of graze the leftovers, but I didn't want to lose my basil. So I brought in a 5-gallon bucket full of basil, and it got a little wilty because I couldn't deal with it right away. So I'm pulling off what looks like to be the best leaves and washing them in the sink. And then I'm also going to start washing a couple of whole stalks, and I'm going to put that in the dehydrator. So this right here is actually going to be for pesto, and then I'm going to use the dehydrator to try and preserve a little bit more. Now, dried basil doesn't have that amazing pungent fresh basil flavor, but it's at least a way to preserve it, and I can put it to some good use, hopefully. So I just washed the stalks, and then I'm putting these stalks onto the dehydrator trays, and I'm going to slide them into the dehydrator at 95 degrees for 18 to 24 hours. And it actually took a little bit longer than 24 hours, but I think it's because I left them on the stalks. It was a little thick for the dehydrator. While the dehydrator is going, let's work on some pesto. So I will be honest and say I've never made pesto before. So this recipe that I'm going to share with you is from the cookbook Nourishing Traditions by Sally Fallon, and I'm excited about it. It smells and looks amazing. I don't see why we wouldn't like it because I love everything that's in it. So I'm pulling all of the freshly washed basil out of the sink, and I'm going to let it air dry on this towel a little bit before I do anything with it. I think I let this sit for about 3 to 4 hours to air dry, and then let's make some pesto now. I think I ended up making 4 times the recipe because I had so much basil, but one batch of this recipe calls for 2 cups of basil leaves, 1/4 to 1/2 cup of olive oil. You kind of just need to see the consistency that's in your food processor. 1/4 cup of nuts. The original recipe called for pine nuts, and I didn't have any, so I just used walnuts. I really think you can use any kind of nuts that you would like. 1/2 teaspoon of salt. We love Redmond real salt here. That's what I used. 1/4 cup of Parmesan cheese, and 2 to 4 cloves of garlic. I used 4 because we love garlic. As you can see, you just start out by blending up or using the food processor to get the basil into smaller bits. And then add all the rest of your ingredients, your garlic, your walnuts or whatever nuts you're using, your Parmesan, your salt, and then you want to turn your food processor on and slowly add your olive oil. Now, I have like the world's oldest food processor, and so it's actually, I have to like hold it in a weird way, so it was a little tricky. Hopefully if you have a food processor that actually works correctly, you won't have to rig it up. But hey, it made pesto in the end, so I'm happy with that. All right, now let's preserve some eggs. And I don't know about you, but thinking about pasta, I didn't really think about pasta as a way to preserve my eggs. We have an abundance of eggs right now. Seriously, I think when I pulled out these eggs, I had about 20 dozen eggs. So I've had to get creative. We've made egg salad. I've made like pickled eggs that we have yet to try, but I know that my kids are going to love them. I also have water glassed eggs, but this is kind of a new way for me to preserve eggs, and I'm excited about it because I ended up using 12 egg yolks, and then I have the egg whites to use in pancakes or for cake or whatever else we want to use egg whites for. This recipe is actually sourdough, which I'm so excited about. And I let this kind of long ferment because this pasta took me several days to make. I don't know what in the world happened the past several days, but it seemed like the whole world was against me finishing this sourdough pasta. So, this first day, I am just getting all of the ingredients weighed out and mixed together in a bowl. And again, I quadrupled this recipe just like I did for the pesto. Honestly, if you have the stuff and you're getting all the dishes dirty anyway, you might as well just go ahead and quadruple it. So the one times of this recipe is going to be 3 egg yolks, 250 grams of starter. It can be active starter or discard, 19 grams of water, 235 grams of flour, and a teaspoon of salt. This recipe comes from Ruth Ann Zimmerman. You can find her here on YouTube or on Instagram, and she has a very detailed video about this as well, which is how I learned to make this, and I absolutely love it, and so does my family. So, weighed out the flour and the starter and the water, and I'm using my very fancy method here of getting the egg yolks out. What a mess. I'm sure there's like a tool I could be using, but we're just working with what we have here. Now I'm just going to mix this all together. I love this. I think it's technically called a Danish dough whisk or something like that. I call it a dough hook or a dough whisk when I'm tell my kids, hey, can you go get this for me? So I start off mixing it with this, but I will forever and always use my hands in my own kitchen. So my hands are very clean, but after I get it kind of mixed together, I usually just get my hands in there and mix it really well. And you really want to knead this and knead it and knead it and knead it until it comes together in a nice ball. And this is a lot of pasta that I'm making here. So it took a bit of muscle. It was my exercise for the day, but it's actually really fun to get your hands in the dough. It's like adult Play-Doh. Get some bread going or some pasta or something. You are not going to regret it. It's so fun to get your hands in there and get messy. If you have an active sourdough starter, you can actually just, once this is all mixed up, put it straight in the fridge for a couple of hours. If you've used discard, like I did, actually leave it on the counter for like, I don't know, 3 to 6 hours. It doesn't have to be a ton of time, but you kind of want to give that discard a chance to start activating a little bit. Then when you're ready to wrap it up in saran wrap and put it in the fridge, I actually ended up leaving it in the fridge overnight. I might have stayed in the fridge for like 24 hours. So just until you're ready to use it, it can sit in the fridge and wait for you. As soon as you're ready to start working on your pasta, pull it out of the fridge. And I do find that it's a little bit easier to work with at room temperature, not straight out of the fridge. This here, as I'm pulling off pieces and rolling it up, it's straight out of the fridge, and it works okay for this, but definitely do not try to run it through your pasta maker or roll it out until it's come a little more up to room temperature. It doesn't have to be completely room temperature, but it doesn't need to be straight from the fridge either. You just want to pull off about golf ball sized pieces of dough and roll it around in your hand and roll it and coat it in a little bit of flour. You're going to, through the process of making this pasta, you're going to continue to kind of coat it in the flour. If you really want to keep this pasta completely sourdough for the benefits and you're like afraid of the gluten, say, you might want to use like rice flour or another gluten-free kind of flour to do all of this rolling in. We're not super concerned about that because we use kamut flour, and my daughter does fine with kamut flour or sourdough. Those are the two options that we have. And so this works just fine with the flour that we used here, but use your discretion, do what you want to. Just make sure that you are coating it in flour. All right, this is the fun part, or at least my kids would say this is the fun part. I have just a regular old manual hand crank pasta machine that I got off of Amazon that I will link in the description below. It works really well, and I actually really, really like it. The tricky part is if you are by yourself, it can be kind of hard to guide it through, turn the hand crank, and then pull it out from the bottom so that it doesn't stick to itself. So usually I try to do it when my kids are around. I don't always have them around. So anyway, this one that I have can actually clamp onto a countertop, which in theory sounds amazing, except for I only have one place in my entire kitchen that it will work. So clear a spot, find a place. If your dining room table works, that would be a great place to do it as well, but it just doesn't work for us anywhere but here. So you kind of hand crank it onto the counter and then you will work your dough through. Now, we actually start on the highest, would it be the highest setting? I guess the number 7 on this. There's a little dial on the side. I like to start on the number 7 and I just work these through one piece at a time. And as I pull it through the bottom, I am then going to coat it in flour. And each time I do this, I'm going to coat it in a little bit of flour because the most annoying thing is when it gets stuck on the machine and then you have to try to figure out how to get this little bit of flour that got stuck. So try to remember to just keep coating it in flour. You're going to work it through this machine one at a time until all of them have gone through on the number 7. Then you're going to switch down to the number 4. Now, I'm just giving you the numbers we use. I've seen people go way, way, way down to like 2 or 1. I just don't like my pasta that thin. I feel like it turns to mush. So 4 is as low as we go, and it seems to be the perfect consistency and thickness for us. I don't know if you've noticed, but I've worn like 3 or 4 different outfits. This pasta, seriously, did not want to be on YouTube today for some reason. I had to do this in process over several days. And so I just was running really short on time. And so I took like half of the pasta that I had made and I already had rolled it into balls and rolled it in flour. And I decided to try and see how it would freeze. So it's already fermented. It's already done all of what it needs to do. And I'm going to stick it in this baggie and I'm going to try to freeze it. And I'll have to come back later and tell you how it worked out. But my thought is just bring it out, thaw it, roll it through. That way we could have lasagna noodles if we wanted, or I've wanted to try like making bow tie pasta or other kinds of shapes. and I just don't have time to try right now. But popping it in the freezer is a quick way to preserve it as well. And you can pull it out and have fresh pasta on a whim. I don't know, whenever you decide you want it. I would imagine it would thaw pretty quickly too. I don't know. I guess we'll see. And I will come back and let you know. Okay, so now we're rolling this through for the last time to flatten it out. I've turned the dial to 4, and we're going to put this through, and you'll see it gets really thin. And obviously if it gets thin, it's going to get a little longer. So you have to get creative with the space that you have in your kitchen to make sure that you have space for this. But I'm going to put this through, all of the pieces through on the number 4, and then I am trying to see if I can put a little bit of flour on this in the pan. It doesn't work perfectly, but it's close enough. If you feel like it's sticking for you, you can also try putting a piece of parchment paper over the top of it and running an iron over it without the steam. And it kind of dries it a little bit, and then it helps it not stick together quite so much. So that's another option if you want to try that. Then you can put your cutting attachment on, and you just move your handle up to where the cutting attachment is and run the pasta through. The pieces are so long that after a while I figured out, you know what, this might be easier if I cut this really long piece in half. And that's what I ended up doing, and it does make it a little bit easier to handle. Now, you will see many different ways to dry your pasta. I actually have like one of those portable drying racks, I guess they're called, for inside. And I have dried pasta that way before, especially if I know I'm going to use it soon. But this pasta, I'm actually hoping to be a little more long-term storage. And so when you've got pasta that dries straight, it's really hard to store without it actually breaking into like little tiny crumbly pieces. And so what I found is I toss in a little bit of flour again, and then I want to create almost like little nests of noodles so that it's easier to store. I can throw it into, say, a gallon-sized jar and just pull out little, however many nests I need for a meal. And it seems to work out a lot better for me that way. Be warned that your kitchen will be a disaster when you're making pasta, but it's so worth it. It's so delicious, guys. Sourdough pasta is my new favorite thing. It just makes everything taste absolutely amazing, and you're not going to ever want to go back again to regular pasta. Add in some pesto to this homemade sourdough pasta, and seriously, you are going to think you died and went to heaven. I hope you enjoyed this video, guys. Remember, anyone can homestead. So, do I need to close it or just stick it down in there? You want to try to close it? Oh, yeah, that's what I was afraid would happen.
Oh, the dough will fall.
Here. Okay. Close this too?